Hey guys, what's going on? This is the Flag Plus Football Junior Podcast. My name is Brent Bakken. I am joined by Simon Dagenet and the main man, the master of ceremonies, if you will, Chapman.
Ceremonies, he said.
Master of ceremonies, master of audio. I don't know. What do you want me to say?
I don't know. Just call it master control. Although I'm not very good at controlling the situation sometimes. But anyway,
The guy in charge.
There you go. Exactly. The man behind the mic, if you will, behind the whole production, if you will. All right, guys, so this is it. The final week of the regular season is here. So we're really excited. Obviously, playoffs are just around the corner for a couple of teams. But before we get into that, let's just talk about a couple of games that happened this weekend.
Okay.
We had the Musketeers, Simon. They remain undefeated. They knocked off the Tigers 20-0. What for you stood out in that game?
To me, first of all, as always, Caden Shaw has been having a great season so far. He's really showing. He's really playing really well for the Musketeers. But this week, Cam Trickett had a very good interception on defense. It's his first one of the season, but he's been playing really well. He's been improving. You can see a difference between week 1 and now. And I think this is the most. One of the players that improved the most, and this is what I like the most about FPF Junior, is to see guys that never really played football before show up. The first few weeks is difficult because it's a new sport, and then as they move up, as they develop, you see them around week 6, 7, 8. They make plays, they know how to do. They're more comfortable playing the game. You see that they enjoy it more too.
Well, that's exactly it. Some of you guys may recognize me from covering the winter season. Obviously, again, same thing like Simon was saying. A lot of players come into this league from various different backgrounds, and that's what I love about the FPF Junior. Some guys from tackle, some guys from flag football at school, touch football. Other kids have never played before, and they're coming in and getting their some real game experience, having a good time, and getting better as the season goes along. So Cam Trickett, obviously one of those players. Going back, you mentioned, though, Caden Shaw. So far in the season, 17 touchdown passes and only one interception. In your opinion, obviously you're a quarterback in the adult division for a couple of different teams. Is Caden the best QB in the freshman division?
I believe so. I believe he's been playing like the best quarterback. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He has 1 interception in 7 games, which is super impressive. He's been playing lights out the entire way. Since the trials, I saw that he was a really talented quarterback, and he's been showing that ever since. He has a good team around him, but he is a very, very good player.
Okay, and obviously on both sides of the ball, we mentioned the Musketeers are an undefeated team right now. In your opinion, sitting at 7-0, is it their offense that has been the key to the success, or is it the defense, or a combination of both?
It's really a combination of both. Their offense is really good. They've been putting up points early in the game to put the pressure on the other team, but their defense is also very strong. They have a lot of talented players all around. Their rusher is very good. They have a few, like I mentioned, Cam Trickett, Massimo Moufrage is also playing really well for them. They have a bunch of guys all around. It's not just one player that really shines out for them, but everybody on the team has been giving their best, and the team has been playing great all around. It's not just one guy, it's everybody. And that's what makes them really strong.
All right, so definitely a team...
a team effort.
Team effort, there you go. Okay, so moving on, we have the Tigers now. They lost to the aforementioned Musketeers, and they also lost to the Panthers 26-8. For the Tigers right now, I mean, they're not having the season they wanted. They finished regular season actually at 0-8. They have a couple of playmakers on their team though, and Thomas Hemans, some Minahan brothers, Alex Pilati. For you, why have they struggled so much, do you think?
I find that they had trouble getting going early in the season. They've been moving around a little bit. Alex Paliotti started at quarterback for them. The past few weeks, he's been playing receiver. Noah has been subbing in as quarterback for them. It's a bit of a different switch. Obviously, Alex Paliotti was a good player, but as a quarterback, it didn't really work out for the team. Moving as a receiver, is a fantastic receiver. They're switching things around. I find it's one of those seasons where it's a bit frustrating because you try different things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you just lack that consistency. They have a few really good players. Phoenix Thomas had a really good game this week with about 50 or 60 yards. Caleb Perks has been playing fantastic the whole way. He's a snapper for them. He's been the guy on offense. They have good pieces. I find it's just it's the small things that they haven't mastered yet that makes it very difficult against a team like we mentioned earlier, like Musketeers. That the team effort is really there, and they got a lot of games that were close. It's just they didn't manage to to punch in and get the W, which is the only matter. But they're still in the playoffs, and we'll see what they do in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, definitely. So they have time to turn things around, if you will. So now going over to the Panthers, you mentioned this is obviously one of the top teams in the freshman division, sitting right now at 4-3, coming off a big win, as you said, over the Tigers, 26-8. For the Panthers, what's going to be key for these guys moving forward?
They've been using many different quarterbacks all across the season. They've had Massimo Longo play quarterback probably the most, but they've also had Kevin Desire playing also quarterback. There are different styles of quarterbacks, so they show a different look. It's been working for them so far. They give you a different look with every kind of player. They give every player a chance also to play, which is great because everybody wants to play quarterback. So some people want to, some people don't. It's fun to see them give a chance. You want to do it, then I won't just give you 20 minutes. I'll give you a few shots at it, which is fun too. I find the Panthers system has been working really well for them. And as we mentioned earlier, they have a bunch of key players, for instance, like Caleb Perks, who's been playing really well for them. I think it's just a matter of execution. Sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're not. It happens like any other sports, any other players. You and I, we both play football. We have good games, we have bad nights. But overall, Panthers have been really well.
Okay, and you obviously mentioned the combination of Phoenix Thomas and Caleb Perks. But just with the revolving, I touched on this earlier in Division E podcast, you have a couple of teams who go with multiple quarterbacks. The Panthers and FPF Junior, and one of them being a quarterback, like you are, as I mentioned. Why has it been successful for a team like the Panthers to be rotating quarterbacks when we've usually seen historically hasn't been the case?
Well, in their case, they don't share drives. They share, like, they both have their own full series and then they switch. So luckily they don't switch like every play, which would be probably catastrophic in my opinion. But to switch sometimes it's one half each, which also works because you get your full half to do your thing. And then guys like Massimo Longo is also a very good receiver. So you have him at quarterback, and then you switch him to playing receiver. He's also a very good receiver, very good defender. So it opens up the field for different things. You get a different receiver you have to cover, a different thing you have to look at. And also, when you're playing you play against a brand new quarterback. So it's like a brand new game, and you're not too sure what to do. So it's been working really well for them because everybody's good at every position.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so now we're going to jump over to the sophomore division. We have the Wildcats. Once again, without Jaden Fournette, they struggle losing to the Hurricanes 27-13. We see for a team like the Hurricanes, a guy like Noah Smallwood, I had a chance to look at him, cover him, I should say, this past winter. He made his debut in FPF Junior. Phenomenal player on offense and on defense. He even threw the ball a bit too. William Bradford, another player stepping up and doing big things for this team as well. How dangerous do you think those two players will be going forward for the team?
Well, Wildcat has been probably the top contenders so far in the division. Everybody's talking about Wildcats, how strong they are, how well they've been playing. This week they weren't without Jaden Fournette, who's probably one of their most decorated player on the team. He's very fast, he's tall. It gives them an edge on a lot of players. He wasn't there this week. William Bradford did not have his best outing so far. He's a fantastic quarterback. Everybody has bad nights, as we discussed. He had a bad outing during the hour on Sunday. I find that Wildcats will be one of those dark horses teams. They might not finish first due to their record at the moment, but there will be one of those teams that's very difficult to beat, and we'll see how they do in 2 weeks. But personally, I would hate to play against them because they're that kind of team that could surprise anybody.
Yeah, definitely a lot of firepower, even as you said, without the aforementioned Fournette. Defensively, you see Brendan Urquhart coming through with 4 sacks. I mean, whether you play in the adult division or the kids division, 4 sacks is still 4 sacks. I just want to talk about his impact on the game and how do you think he'll do when the playoffs come around?
Well, Brendan has been consistent for somehow. He's been getting about 3 or 4 sacks every game, which is, as you mentioned, a lot. To see a guy gets that many sacks consistently is very surprising. He's been phenomenal. He's been putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's making the defense around him better because the quarterback has less time to throw the football, and it's something very underrated as you look at FPF as a whole, not just juniors but even for seniors. A very good rusher makes a very good defense, and this is why Hurricanes is a very good defense because their rusher is phenomenal. All
right. Next we had the Yellow Jackets. They took on the Fighting Irish in a tight defensive game.
Yeah.
Yellow Jackets coming away with a 13-0 victory. For the Yellow Jackets, obviously you've had a chance to do scorekeeping and to cover these teams all season long. Is defense their calling card?
Yellow Jackets are more of an offensive kind of team. They have they're very with the tandem of Charles Presser and Jonathan Yeagerman. Garner Ross has a lot of options to throw to. The guys are tall, they're fast. They have a good knack for the ball, and you could see it. The past few weeks, Garner Ross is not the one to throw many interceptions. I was surprised to see that he actually had 2 interceptions against Fighting Irish, which is kudos to Fighting Irish for getting those balls and fighting back. The last time they played each other, it wasn't that close. But this time around, they managed to keep them to 13 points, which is impressive by itself. So, good on the Fighting Irish defense for playing this well. I've been calling them out the past few weeks, saying that their defense is much better than people give them credit for. And this week just proves that they could keep one of the best offenses in the league to 13 points only in 44 minutes is impressive.
Now, speaking of impressive defenses, with the Yellow Jackets now, I mean, I'm looking right now, they have 7 interceptions. On the regular season, led by Charles Presser with 4. Do you think it's the fact that they're good at getting turnovers is a key to their success, at least defensively? I know you mentioned they are an offensive team, or is it the pass rush of Evan Diaz Julio, who has 10 sacks, which is pretty decent no matter what level you're playing at?
Yeah, Evan has been playing as a really good rusher. His pass rush has been really good. He's been putting a lot of pressures on quarterbacks. You see in the sophomore division, the quarterbacks are not as used to playing against a rusher as, for instance, the varsity division they've been playing before, or even for us seniors. So it's a lot more difficult for them to adjust. And when you get a really fast rusher like Evan, he's getting so quickly that he gets into the QB's head, and then they have to take him into account, which takes away from looking at his own receivers, and that's when you make a mistake. So yes, he's been playing really well. He helps his defenses a lot, and he creates interceptions simply by putting so much pressure on the quarterback that the ball goes up instead of straight at the player, and it creates turnovers.
And there you go. I mean, you guys are right here. I mean, no matter what level of football you're playing, a good pass rush will always help the secondary, and good coverage ability in the secondary will always help the pass rush.
Just like the NFL.
There you go. All right, so moving on to the varsity division. The Lions coming up with a big win over the Cougars. The Lions, however, they found a way to keep Ryan McGrath, son of former Concordia Stingers, my former head coach, Jerry McGrath. They kept him off the score sheet for the first time this season. The Lions, Evan White with 7 TD passes.
Evan White has been playing fantastic. There's no other way to put it. Everything he's been doing is he stepped into FPF this first week. He missed the first week. His second week was good, but wasn't as impressive. And ever since, it just took off. He's a brand new player to FPF. He loves it. It shows. He's been playing really well. On the flip side, Cougars, they lost their quarterback prior to week 2. Right after week 1, week 2, they lost their quarterback playing rugby. Broke his Kalen Trepanier, who played sophomore last season and winter. It's tough for them. They had to scramble, find another quarterback amongst the team. They've been doing well, but Lions are another type of beast altogether.
All right, so, and after that we have the Longhorns. Dave Allen's squad, obviously a veteran team. They won the inaugural sophomore division championship 2 years ago. 0-8 to finish off the regular season. It's a little tough, but there is a lot of talent on that team. Just a bit of a mix of a lot of new players that Dave had to break in. A lot of guys who were and girls who are new to FPF. So obviously there's a transition period. With that, they lost. They fell to the Mustangs 43-6, and they lost to the Voltigeurs 18-15. Now let's go into the Mustangs game. You talked about this season, even on the air, off the air. Dylan Hacker, pretty much a game breaker. He had 4 TDs. What can you say about him?
Well, Dylan wasn't there to begin with the team. He's replacing one of the players who couldn't make most of the games because of he plays baseball and hockey, I believe. So Dylan Hacker stepped in. He's been playing really well so far. The first time I saw him, he was a really good corner on defense. He was a shutdown corner, and then he made some plays on offense. Shows that he's a really good both way players. In this game, he was more of an offensive threat than a defensive threat with 4 returns. He's really one of the best players on the Mustangs team, and he's one of the guys that you absolutely need to cover if you play against him.
Okay, and speaking of his teammate, Kobe White, 27 touchdown passes this season. Even on the defensive end, 4 interceptions, 3 sacks. I think two-way players, it doesn't get much better than that.
Kobe has been improving a lot. This first few weeks were a bit difficult. You got to learn the game. The coaches didn't know the game also, so it's very tough for them to try to get everything together. You're playing against a team that knows what they're doing, and you're not too sure. You're trying what works for you guys, what doesn't. They figured out that 2-point converts were their key thing for them. They keep going for 2 points, and they keep getting them. So they put a lot of pressure on the opposing team to go up. For instance, 16-6 after the first 3 possessions is very tough to overcome, and that's what Mustangs do really well. Kobe's very mobile. He runs around a lot, buys a lot of time, runs in for 2-point converts also. So he found what works really well for them, for him and for his team, and he's been doing a fantastic job at it.
Yeah, definitely on the afternoon he went 14 of 18 for 173 yards and 6 TDs. So definitely he's bringing his A game. He's improving, I guess you could say, as the season goes along at the right time. And going forward to the aforementioned last game with the Longhorns losing a heartbreaker 18-15 to the Voltigeurs. Definitely a tough loss for the Longhorns team trying to get their first W to close out the season. And we had Simon Boudreau going 13 of 33 for 152 yards and a touchdown. All 3 touchdowns going to Nassim Regargui, pardon me. So coming through for a big game. I like this ratio. 5 receptions, 15 yards. 3 of those receptions went for touchdowns. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah. Well, Voltigeurs just moved up from sophomore division to varsity. It's a strong team. They've been playing really well. Longhorns, sadly, are plagued with injury. The first that went down was the quarterback, Alex, who's back now, but he hurt his ankle trying to play earlier. Then they lost one of their best players in David Chalonchos. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. But anyhow, what happens was they lost one of their best players as a quarterback DB, and then they lost another one of the best players as a receiver. So it really hurts them all over the place. Hopefully, with this bye week that's coming up for them, because they're not playing week 8, they'll have 2 weeks before the playoffs, and they'll be able to come back at 100%. If that team's 100%, they'll look a lot like what they showed us in the week 1, which was that they kept the game really, really close. I think they lost by 2 points in week 1, and it was their best outing. So if they could get their experience from the season and come back 100% for the playoffs, Longhorns might actually shot more than one team in the playoffs.
And speaking of the Longhorns now, Alex Kahan, he's a guy you got to see play a little bit of quarterback this year. What does he need to do to improve and have his team get a W in the playoffs?
Well, he's a very mobile quarterback. He likes to run around, buy a lot of time. With an injured ankle, obviously, that makes it very difficult to run around and buy time. In that case, if he could come back 100% and have that mobility back in the pocket, he could become a very dangerous quarterback to play against. He likes to buy time and chuck it deep. He has a good arm. But obviously, with a bad ankle, it's very difficult for him to get his footing down before throwing the football, and he tends to underthrow his receivers. So hopefully, if he's back 100%, he's going to come back as the strong quarterback that we believed he would be in this season.
Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for the game recap segment of the show. We're going to jump into the awards now. And one thing I know that Rob did last year in the winter season is instead of how we have in the adult division, quarterback of the year, wide receiver, defensive, two-way, so on and so forth, what he did makes a lot of sense. He just put team MVPs.
Yes.
Which it gives more of a chance for more players on each and every team to win an award.
Yeah, so instead of going for one guy for one position per division, we're going with the guy, the most valuable player, the MVP, on per team. So everybody per team, we're going to go across the team, look at your contribution to your own team, how you played, who did what during the season, and see who was the most valuable player on your team, and we'll go with the awards that way. So today what we're going to do is we're going to preview those awards. There's still 1 week left, so there's still time for players to step up, make some plays, get that award for themselves. And we're going to talk about some candidates that could possibly get the award in a week or so time.
Okay, so we'll start off once again in the freshman division with the Musketeers. We mentioned before a lot of playmakers, a lot of difference makers on your team. Caden Shaw, Massimo Mafrage, Brendan Diaz, Julio. Who, in your opinion, Simon, would you give the team MVP to?
Well, we mentioned Caden Shaw earlier in the show, speaking how well he's been playing as a quarterback and even on defense. But I'd like to give a special shout-out to Massimo Mufrage, who's been the receiver for the team. He's been the number one guy on offense, who's been making Caden Shaw look really good. Obviously, as a quarterback, you could be as good as you want. If your receivers don't catch the football, there's only so much you could do. In this case, Massimo Mufraj has been a fantastic addition to this team, and he believes to be in the talk. He should be in the talk for MVP this season.
Okay. So now going forward to the Panthers, I mean, Caleb Perks, Massimo Longo, Phoenix Thomas, a lot of good candidates on that team. Who would you go with?
I would go with Caleb Perks. He's been the number one guy on offense. He's been sure-handed. He's always open. He finds ways. He gets those touchdowns. He's been playing fantastic football so far, and it's something special to see him play. He's really, really good at what he does, and he loves what he's doing.
All right. Sounds good to me. Finally, rounding up the freshman division, we have the Tigers. It's Thomas Hemans. There's a lot of good players on that team. Alex Pilati, Noah, Suminahan. Again, a lot of good candidates.
Yep.
Who do you think is pulling it ahead right now?
I think Thomas Emmons, more of an all-around kind of player. He brings to the defensive side and the offensive side of the ball. We could also have the discussion for Noah or Alex Baliotti, but I believe it might turn into Thomas Emmons' favor just because of his contribution on every aspect of the ball.
All right, fair enough. So now jumping over to the sophomore division, let's start with the Hurricanes. There's a couple of guys, Ashton Philistine, Kevin Beaumier, Brendan Urquhart. Who do you think wins it?
I have to go with Brendan on this one. The rusher for Hurricanes, he's been the heart and soul of their defense. They've been a defensive team first, and we've talked about how many sacks he had this season so far. I think there's no denying the impact he had on this team.
Yeah, Urquhart definitely coming through with 12 sacks for the Hurricanes. Another guy maybe even you want to talk about as well, Marco Gentile, 9 TD passes and 5 rushing TDs for the Canes. Next up is the Yellow Jackets. We mentioned the combination of Presser, Yagerman, Diaz, Julio. How do you see that one shaking out?
Charles Presser and Jonathan Yagerman have very similar stat lines. They're both very good offensively and defensively. I think it might go in Jonathan Yagerman's favor, simply because he has a more impressive offensive stats. But then again, it all depends on the last week, who shows up, how it shakes down. It could also go to Garner Ross, the quarterback, who's been playing really well. So I find that might be one of the closest races to watch.
Yeah, I got to say, personally for me, I think that might be the toughest one. I mean, there's a good team here sitting at 4-3. Ross, 24 touchdown passes. Jagerman, almost 400 yards receiving, 378 with 12 TDs. The 10 stats we mentioned before with Diaz, Julio, and Presser with 6 TDs and 4 INTs. We're going to go over to the Wildcats. Now, it's a bit of, not a bizarre circumstance, but it's a little different in the sense with Jaden Fournette, obviously. A great player. He's been missing the last couple of games, but he's still in the running for the MVP along with Noah Smallwood and William Bradford.
Yep. I find that in this particular situation, everybody knows Jaden Fournette. He's the kind of guy that you have to account for on the team. Yep. But I find that the MVP might actually go to Noah Smallwood in this case. He's been getting the job done week in and week out. He's been playing really well. And although Jaden Fournette is a bit more flashy, Noah's been getting, he has the stats to back up the award. And he's been much better than people give him credit for.
Yeah, definitely. Again, like I said, I saw him in the winter, and he just took over games. Not the biggest kid at all, but he has great hands and he has speed. So far this season, 18 catches, 260 yards, 6 TDs. Definitely a game breaker. We got the Dusters coming up next. This is interesting. I mean, the Dusters, a very athletic team.
Yes.
They have a lot of speed, some decent size as well. And there's a lot of candidates to choose from. I mean, you have Matthew Ellie, Russell Beanstalk, Lewis Epstein.
I would have to go, so far this season, I would have to go with Lewis Epstein. But last week, they had a doubleheader. They played 2 games, and Matthew Ellie really stepped up his game. Yeah. Got about 4 touchdowns, I think, in 2 games. That's something we just cannot deny at this point in the season. So I would love to see Lewis Epstein step up a little bit, get more interceptions to close out the season. But I think Matthew Ellie really took it away with last week's performance.
All right. And even Adam Malinoff, too, 15 TDs.
Yeah.
Definitely a team with a lot of playmakers on it. We're going to wrap up the sophomore division with the Fighting Irish. Jacob Provost, Lucas Swiskops, a lot of different players. Mateo the Tulip as well.
I would have to, earlier I was mentioning a lot about Lucas Piscopos, how he's been playing really well for that team. He's a fantastic corner. He really developed really well. But Jacob Provo has been having an impact on every single game. He's the one that got interceptions last week against Yellow Jackets to turn the game into his favor. He's really turning the game around for them defensively, and as their defensive squad, I find the award might actually go into his favor and turn into his favor.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so we're just going to jump quickly into the varsity division. We're going to start with the Voyageurs. You mentioned this is a team that came up from the sophomore division. Nonetheless, they still have some good playmakers, and they're doing some damage in the highest division. How do you see their MVP race shaking out?
Well, it's safe. It's always safe to bet on the quarterback when the team's been playing really well. They're 7-0. Simon Boudreau has been having a fantastic impact offensively and defensively. I think he leads his team in interceptions. Also, he's a quarterback of the team. But ever since they moved up to varsity, Nazim Gagui has been having an absolute impact on every game. He's been the 1-2 punch with Felix Joly. So I'm not too sure how it's going to turn out, but it could really go either way for these guys.
Okay, and moving over to the Lions, I mean, we talked a bit before about Kobe White. There's also Jacob Souls, Jake Applebaum.
Yeah,
definitely a lot of.
They have a lot of talent
names,
from that team. Lions are a fantastic squad. I would love to see Jake Applebaum win it just because of how impactful he is on both sides of the ball. But the way Kobe White has been playing, it's very difficult to go somewhere else but with Kobe White.
Okay, and another team we mentioned before, the Mustangs. Great team. Evan White is in there as quarterback. Dylan Hacker, Max Kadanoff.
Max was really good earlier in the season. Dylan Hacker has kind of been taking the number one role away from him just because of the way he's been playing. But I think this one goes to Evan White simply due to the fact that he's all over the place. He's controlling his offense really well. Defensively, he's been making a lot of plays. And his contribution on 2-point converts is something to mention.
All right, yeah, definitely 4 INTs and 3 sacks on the defensive side of the ball for White. Moving forward, we got the Cougars. I mentioned before, right now sitting at 2-5. This is a team who, as you said earlier, lost Kalen Chapanier, who just tore it up last year in the winter division, winter season, pardon me, in FBF Junior. So you have Olivier Gauthier taking his place now. The record may not be what they want it to be, at least at this point, but so a lot of good players on this team. Ryan McGregor, Dubois, Olivier Dubois as well. How do you see that one?
I would have to say, I would love to see a guy like Alexis Dubois really shine last week and make him play for the MVP. But Ryan McGrath has been absolutely lights out the entire season. He's been their number one guy, and I don't see it going any other way.
All right, and finally to wrap up the varsity division, we got the Longhorns: Spencer Fitzpatrick, Alex Kahan, Eric Flinker. What do you see happening there?
Alex Kahan has been playing. He's more the guy that people talk about simply because he's the quarterback. He plays defense. He's kind of the guy that people look at when you look at the Longhorns. But I find that the Hansung Hero and Spencer Fitzpatrick might actually steal this one away from him simply because he's been consistent every week. He showed up. He's been playing really well. So this might actually be a very close one to watch.
All right. So now let's move forward to the upcoming games coming up. Freshman division, we got the Musketeers taking on the Panthers. What can people expect out of this one?
Well, we touched a bit upon the Musketeers earlier in the show, saying how strong they are all around. Panthers with the revolving door quarterback might give them a different look. Both teams know each other. They've been playing a lot. They've played each other a lot. I think this might be a closer game than people expect. I like to see what the Panthers will bring out this week. It's kind of a preparation for the playoffs for them. They're both going to make the playoffs. They're both going to play each other. Hopefully, they're both going to play each other. So we'll see how it turns out. But I would like to see guys like Alex Paliotti have a great impact offensively for the Panthers. Caleb Perks have a great impact for the Panthers.
Have you seen so far in the history of FPF Junior, where usually a lot of teams end up playing 3 times in the season?
Yep.
It's usually that last game of the season where the team who's 0-2 heading into that one will get the victory. So we'll have to see, of course, if the Panthers could end the undefeated aspirations of the Musketeers. Yep. Another game coming up is we have the Hurricanes, going to the sophomore division. Rather, the Wildcats taking on the Yellow Jackets, and this is going to be a potential playoff preview.
Yeah, with the way the seeding is currently, there's a big chance that this is the game that they'll have in the playoffs in the first round. I like the matchup against Wildcats against Yellow Jackets simply because the Wildcats have Tishon Inkson and Jaden Fournette that can match up really well against Jonathan Yeagerman and Charles Presser. So we might see a guy like Jesse Dime, who's the quarterback, who's the snapper for Yellow Jackets, have a lot more targets than he usually does simply because he might be more open with the underneath routes and be more used offensively due to the other guys getting more attention. So this might be a really good matchup to watch. We'll see how the quarterbacks do, how the players get to do, and we might see some of the other guys get more attention also.
All right, that should be good. And in a match between arguably the two best defenses in FAF Junior, we have the Hurricanes taking on the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, that should be a fantastic matchup. I don't expect the highest scoring game. Both defenses have been playing really greedy so far this season. Like we touched upon a bit earlier, Hurricanes have the fantastic rusher. They also have very good players all around. Fighting Irish, their offense hasn't been exactly what they were hoped for, but their defense has been lights out. So I would expect these two guys to battle it out, and I think 12 points might just be enough to win.
All right, and I got to ask you for that one, Brendan Urquhart versus Jacob Provo. How do you see that one ending out in the MVP race?
That's bound to be interesting. I find that it'll depend on how they play. Jacob Provo might actually end up getting a lot of interceptions that game, depending on how the Hurricanes decide to play it out. If they run the ball a lot or decide to pass it, if they air it out a lot, Jacob Provo has a big chance of getting those interceptions.
All right, so you heard it here first. And finally, wrapping up the sophomore division, we have the Dusters and the Hurricanes. Dusters are coming in on a bit of a roll in this one.
Yeah, the Dusters, they had a difficult start of the season. I think they went 0-4, 0-5. It was tough to begin with. It's a new league, right? They never played in FPF before. The coaches never played in FPF before, but they learned. And last week they won their doubleheader. They won both their games doubleheader to push them forward into the seedings. Now they have one last game against the Hurricanes. They played the Hurricanes before. They know what they're up to against now. It's going to come down to how the Dusters adjust defensively against a defense like the Hurricanes. I think both defenses are going to play really well, and it's going to be one of those games where the defense makes a lot of plays for the team, and it's going to come down to which offense could actually punch it in when it matters the most.
All right, now finally moving on quickly to the varsity division, we have the Cougars taking on the Mustangs.
This is a very interesting one because of the way both teams play. Mustangs are more of a flashy kind of offense, where Cougars tend to grind it out. So it's two very different styles facing against each other. And although if you look at the records, you'd say Mustangs should win this one, it might actually be closer than people expect. And I feel the momentum might switch into Cougars' favor in this one, depending on how the early game begins. Mustangs have been really high when they get a really good push early in the game, when they get the first scores right off the bat. So it's going to come down to Cougars. Can they find a way to minimize the first opening drives from Mustangs?
All right, and we have a battle of two undefeated teams with the Voyageurs taking on the Lions in the final game of the regular season. How do you see that one shaking out?
This is the most interesting game, in my opinion, simply due to the fact that Voltigeur were a bit too strong for sophomore division. They moved up to varsity. They defeated every single team in varsity. Now they're up against the other team that actually defeated everybody else. In this case, Voltigeur's size and speed might not actually be enough for them just to win, because the Lions are also very fast and very tall. So it's going to come down to who plays, and it's a matchup that I'm very looking forward to see how the coaches are going to do, how the team's going to do. The players are going to make a lot of mistakes. It's one of those games that could really go either way, in my opinion.
And this game will obviously have some huge playoff implications. Obviously, with the winner of this game taking on the winner of the 4 and 5 seed, with the loser will then have to take on the second place team.
Yeah, the loser becomes the second seed team, so they're gonna automatically play the third seed instead of the winner of the battle before. So there's a big, and also the winner remains undefeated all the way, right?
Yeah,
the other one takes the one single loss and gets bragging rights. So in my opinion, I would say this is probably one of the biggest games of the season.
Yeah, the losers will have to take on the Mustangs on June 18th. And speaking of that, again, this is the final week of the regular season. As we mentioned earlier, the playoffs are coming up June 17th and 18th at both Stade de Montréal and at the field at Kirkland as well. So, guys, get ready for that. It's going to be some action-packed football. Do not miss out. Even if you're not playing on a Saturday, go check it out. If you're not playing on a Sunday, go check out the Saturday game. This should be awesome.
Yeah, the playoffs are always a different kind of beast for us. It's always fantastic atmosphere, a lot of teams, a lot of emotions. We always have really, really good games in the playoffs, and I have no doubt that this spring will be very similar.
All right. Obviously, Simon, your article will be up this Thursday for the junior division.
Usually Thursday night, might be Friday morning, depending on how things go, but usually my article comes out on Thursday afternoons, Thursday night. Otherwise, I get emails from the parents.
Is there any sneak preview? Anything you want to dish out right now? People should look forward to?
Not so far. No. Just usual good stuff. People seem to like what I've been putting out so far. I've been getting a few requests left and right, so I usually tend to add a little bit. There's a few shout outs for the kids also, so look out for that.
Nice, all right. So definitely it's going to be a must-read article coming out this Thursday from Simon. So, guys, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Again, I'm Brent Balkin. This is Simon Dagenet. We're going to be your odd couple, if you will, for the rest of the way with the FPF Junior podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. So I want to say you can reach myself on Twitter at badnews51 and Simon at Dagenet FPF. So if you have any things you want to shout out to us or say that we should talk about on the podcast, feel free to reach us.
Yep.
So this is it. This is episode number 3, I believe, Chapman, for the FPF Junior podcast. And
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. And our episode number 1 for Simone and I. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we will, pardon me, be back next Wednesday, hitting you guys up and getting ready for the playoffs. Have a good night.